When you see this bridge, you know you're in Red Cliff.
The High Arch Bridge at Red Cliff, Colorado, rises 209 feet above the Eagle River.
Bridges can tell stories. As artifacts, they can reveal the history of a county, a town, a state.
Walking under the arches of Red Cliff Bridge transports Kathy Hiker back to the 1930s.
The Red Cliff Bridge is an artifact that came out of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's economic recovery programs during the Great Depression. That was a time when the federal government kicked in a lot of money for road improvements to both jumpstart the economy, and also the improvements were needed.
For 2 years, workers braved frigid temperatures, suspended high above the river below.
There are stories of workers spending the entire day on this bridge. They were hoisted up in buckets or on platforms. They packed their lunches with them. And when the workers left, the kids would come out, and they used the structure like monkey bars on a school playground.
The bridge would eliminate 2 miles of steep, narrow mountain roads.
A columnist, actually for the state legislature, came and saw the bridge, and he wrote about this is the end of the white knuckle drivings where you're praying that you'll get past Red Cliff.
Travelers crossing the bridge can appreciate its utility and beauty as they round Battle Mountain. But many times we cross bridges without even knowing it.
Oftentimes we go from point A to point B in a bit of a hurry, right? And are thinking more about how we get there than what we're looking at while we're en route.
The Colorado Department of Transportation wants to see more attention placed on historic bridges. Director Shoshana Liu believes they play an important role in cultural identity.
Things like roads and bridges, are extraordinarily important for the utility of getting where we need to go today. But they also can take us back to periods of time that are foundational, for the sort of culture of Colorado.
CDOT studied their bridges with an eye for history and practicality.
First and foremost, we need it to work. I mean, many of these bridges don't work for today's purposes, so you can't just keep them the way they were. And oftentimes it's very expensive to try and upgrade in place.
They identified 46 bridges in their system, which have historic value and a high probability of being preserved.
This bridge behind me, the Cherry Creek Bridge, was built in 1946.
Historian Lisa Schock points to some recent success stories.
We were able to preserve the original arch on the bridge while still widening the structure so that it could meet the current transportation needs. We're really looking at some of these bridges that are in this nomination to try to determine if we can balance that. Can we keep it in place and still meet transportation needs in the future?
The bridges come in all different shapes, sizes, and materials.
Saracio Canyon, which is on State Highway 12, is a WPA bridge. It's built on a skew and it has really beautiful stone-faced piers. I also really love Rainbow Falls. It's tucked away in a canyon. It carries US 24. A lot of people have gone there to put graffiti on our bridge substructure, so it has this sort of interesting cultural feel to it.
Some bridges were built using local materials, such as volcanic rock on the Rideau Seiko Creek Bridge in San Luis.
To me, they're historic properties. To the engineers at CDOT, they're functional features.
We look at safety demands, we look at condition, and we look at how we can bring it back up to meet today's safety standards.
For CDOT engineer Michael Collins, that presents a delicate balancing act.
Bridges are kind of like an old house, right? Buying an old house and having that charm and living in it, being able to see it as part of the original design for the landscape of where that bridge is located, trying to retain that as much as possible, but being able to bring it updated to today's safety standards and to be able to bring it back to today's functional needs.
Meeting those needs creates challenges. For example, those old steel truss bridges, they have low vertical clearance issues and
a lot of the safety rail, there's no good place to really mount it on those bridges, and so we have to get creative in how we can try to bring the safety standards back up.
Not easy and not cheap.
Figuring out where the places that you get the most bang for your buck in preserving those links can be, it's something that's a challenge for us as we develop our infrastructure.
It's a conversation CDOT is looking forward to continuing with local communities.
We want people to sort of, broaden the spectrum a little bit of what can be historic and what's important to local and state history.
That's why it is important to keep records, preserve where it is possible to preserve, and make sure that these bridges remain a part of Colorado's history.